Hello and welcome to the Tuesday, March 11th, 2025 edition of the SANS Internet Storm Center's Stormcast. My name is Johannes Ulrich and today I'm recording from Jacksonville, Florida. Well, Xavier went out and went malware hunting again. In one of his malware safaris, he came across another odd API calls. That's one of the tricks that Xavier often uses, looking for odd API calls. The odd API call here was a Windows API call, UUID from string A. So what it does is it takes a UUID, a universal unique identifier. These are these long 128-bit identifiers. And then it takes that string and converts in its binary format. In this case, it was actually used to encode a malware. So the malware was encoded in UUID strings, 16 bytes or 128 bits at a time. It was transmitted to the victim in this format and then decoded into its original binary form using this Windows API call, but the actual script was written in Python. Turned out to be a Cobalt strike beacon, but overall still important to know that yes, attackers can use these creative API calls to encode malware in various formats. And apparently, according to Xavier, the Lazarus group, the North Korean group, often going after crypto coin, has been known to use this particular trick in the past. Let me have a little bit an interesting, tricky vulnerability. I mainly want to cover it because it's a little bit confusing here. It's a vulnerability in Moxa switches. Moxa makes switches for factory environments, so a lot of them are used in ICS and OT networks. The problem here is that this particular vulnerability, which they call a front-end authorization logic disclosure vulnerability, that can be used to bypass authentication and gain admin access to the switch, it was originally disclosed and patched January 15th. But I saw yesterday, actually, this vulnerability come back. I saw a new bulletin being issued, so was wondering what was going on here. Well, the problem is that the scope expanded. The original disclosure just covered the EDS 508A series switches. This new disclosure now covers the PT series switches. So pay attention here if you're running Moxa switches in your environment, that everything is up to date and patched. And users of Opentext Identity Manager Advanced Edition should be upgrading to version 4.9. The vulnerability that's being addressed here is allowing the exposure of insufficiently protected credentials. The impact of the vulnerability is that an authenticated user can escalate privileges, can basically get higher credentials for a more privileged account. This is usually not something that's considered sort of critical privilege escalation, but in this case, because the product is an identity management system and is responsible for often protecting a large number of applications, certainly something that you should address quickly. Well, then for any fellow PHP developers out there, if you're using Livewire, which is often used in PHP to create good-looking front ends, then you may also be using Volt, which is an API to interface with Livewire. Volt had just patched a remote code execution vulnerability. It does take advantage of some of the templates here being used that can be then used in order to inject a PHP code. The vulnerability description here on the Livewire GitHub is a little bit of a joke. It's one-liner. Malicious user-crafted request payloads could potentially lead to remote code execution within Volt components. Make sure you are updated to version 1.7.0 or later. Well, this is it for today. So thanks for listening. Thanks to everybody liking, subscribing, and also leaving good reviews for this podcast. And tomorrow, of course, don't forget, it's Patch Tuesday. And talk to you again tomorrow. Bye.